Good afternoon. Thank you for being here with us at Houston Center for Contemporary Craft on a gorgeous Saturday. We are deeply honored to have the esteemed artist, thought leader, and educator Sonya Clark with us here today. You are standing in one half of We Are Each Other, a landmark exhibition surveying her communal art making, a groundbreaking and abiding tenet of her practice. The other half of this abbreviated version of the exhibition is on view at Houston Museum of African American Culture, just 4 blocks to our east, so please go visit that after this. Sonya reimagines the ways in which collaboration, dialogue, and collective action shape the fabric of our society. Her work invites us to reflect on the interconnectedness of all people and urges us to consider the shared histories and futures we craft together. It is a privilege to welcome Sonya Clark. Please join me in welcoming her to Houston.
Thank you all so much for being here today. We're going to walk through the gallery, and I'm going to say a couple things about some of the pieces. But I have to tell you that the thing that makes me most happy is your presence. Hi again. Some of you were there last night. Well done. Taking attendance. All right. Teacher in me is like, well done. Came twice. You get extra credit. The thing that makes me so happy is your presence. I mean, here we are together in this room. I don't know, how many of us are there? Maybe 50? What do you guess, about 50? But I'd like you to consider that if we just go back 10 generations in your family, just 10 generations. Some of you might be able to name a 10th great-grandparent, right? Some of you. Not all of us, but some of you. You go back 10 generations, and that's 224 people that made you, right? And suddenly the room was more crowded. And so it's that kind of thing that I think about when I think about collaboration, what collaboration really is. When I'm working in my studio, supposedly by myself, I am there with multiple people who are responsible for making the person who is standing here before you. And that's a responsibility, right? So I'm going to stop talking for a moment, and I want you to listen to the song that is being played, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that song is. So just for a little bit, we're going to listen. So what you're listening to is a collaboration in the very strict sense of the word, right? Very strict sense. The piece that this gentleman, what's your name again? I know Rob. The piece that Rob is standing next to here, this piece here, is called Sounding the Ancestors. It's a strict collaboration in the sense that the hair is from my head. I went to a bow maker in Richmond and asked them if they would rehair this violin bow with my hair. So literally a collaboration, like someone did the fabrication for me. I'm a smart enough craftsperson to say, like, what am I willing to spend 10,000 hours on, and what am I going to, cash in someone else's 10,000 hours, right? So I'm happy to pay someone else for their skills. So strict collaboration in that sense. To say that another way of looking at this piece is to say, well, why did you rehair, because that's what it's called, it's not called restrung, why did you rehair a bow? Real question is, why did it take you so long to rehair a bow? You've been working with hair. You, Sonya, have been working with hair for a very long time. You are married to a musician. Certainly you thought about instruments that have hair in them. Well, no, I didn't. But the ancestors gave me a gift, and it's a gift that started from a long time ago and a gift that started a little bit more closely to when I actually worked with the bow maker in Richmond to have this piece fabricated. my husband, who was a musician, was playing with Regina Carter, who is a genius MacArthur-winning jazz violinist. And it was only in getting to know Regina that I went, hey, wait a second. Violin bows have horsehair. You know what I could do? I could replace that horsehair with my own hair. Okay. So then we have that. And then Regina came to record something in Richmond with my husband. We were living in Richmond, Virginia at the time. And I said, hey, Regina, you know how you're a genius and all that? Can you get some sound out of this? Any sound at all? And so Regina was in my studio, and she said, if I get some rosin on this, I can get some sound out of it. And then she recorded what we're hearing is Lift Every Voice and Sing, popularly known as a Black or the Negro national anthem, right? It wouldn't have happened if my husband wasn't a musician. It wouldn't have happened, if all those things, if the stars didn't line up. It also, then I had this recording, and I happened to be in another place, in another institution, the American Academy in Rome, and I ran across another amazing musician, one of your own, Jason Moran. And Jason Moran and I became friends, and Jason knew that I knew a lot of jazz musicians, including the one I was married to, Regina, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, what are you working on here? And I said, well, I'm doing a bunch of things around hair, but I also just did this recording of Lift Every Voice and Sing with Regina playing this hair bow of my dreadlock. And he said, ooh, can I hear it? What you're listening to is Jason's remastering of that. So it's a collaboration multiple times over. Now, where is the seed of all of this that could have been planted very long ago? When I was 10, my Jamaican grandmother, the only grandparent I knew, the one who taught me how to thread a needle, so all of this is her fault. We all called her Chummy. Her children, her grandchildren, her friends all called her Chummy because she was everyone's chum, everyone's friend, Chummy. Chummy had a magnificent singing voice. Mezzo-soprano singing voice. I can hear her singing voice now, 58 years later, in my head. I cannot hear her speaking voice, but I remember her singing voice. The seed that was planted is a longing for that first teacher who taught me how to thread a needle, to have her voice in me. Guess where her voice lives? In the DNA of the curl pattern of my hair. Right? She's in me. She's certainly one of my 2024, right? She's certainly in me. How can I hear her voice? If I ask Regina Carter to play the DNA for my hair that has my DNA in it, and consequently Chummy's DNA in it as well, then I can hear her voice. What's happening? Is it building breathing? Yeah? I have to do a little bit more love for... Is someone sitting here? Are you sitting here? A little bit more love for Jason Moran. I think that's going to be okay. So Jason remastered what you're hearing, but this piece is also a piano roll of Jason Moran playing his version of Lift Every Voice and Sing, and I had that piano roll punched into this piece, and then wrote the lyrics from the first lyric from Lift Every Voice and Sing in the Roman alphabet, and then transliterated it into a hair font that I worked on with a graphic designer by the name of Bo Peng. Again, I don't know how to make a font, so I'm going to go to an expert. Cut off some of my kitchen. Some of you all know what that is. If you don't, now you do. The hair back here, right? And I said all of the letters need to come from this. And then we worked on, make the D a little bit more like this and the W a little bit more like this. So those words from James Weldon Johnson that got set to music, and that history of the presence of Black people in this nation, and how crucial we are to the building of this nation, are embodied in these little sheets here, right? That's not enough. There's this idea of the embodiment of the sound through my grandmother's voice, through Regina Carter's playing, through Jason Moran's remastering, Jason's playing and remastering, and all of that. You see that? Those resonances? But then I also started thinking, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we move into the other space, I started thinking about what it means about another seed that was planted a long time ago. So this is my name, Sonya Clark. You all can read this. This is also my name, part of my name. And that's a Y. And down here, most of Clark. Right? In the same hair font. Hair font was named Twist. Ask me later who gave it that name. Ask me later. How did I arrive at this hair font called Twist? Well, I started thinking when I was a student, an undergraduate student, not studying art, studying psychology. I was an undergraduate student at Amherst College. I read a book called Decolonizing the Mind by an author by the name of Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a Kenyan author who had been jailed for writing in Kikuyu, his native language. Jailed for writing in his indigenous language in his country of Kenya. Jailed for writing in his indigenous language. So he went about encouraging all these other African authors throughout the continent, 2,000 some languages, write in your indigenous languages because wisdoms will be lost when you use the colonizer's tongue and the colonizer's mind. Write in your indigenous languages. And so I read that in my 20s. When I returned back to the institution as a professor, I now teach at Amherst College. Guess who was one of the first visiting lecturers? Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I was gobsmacked. And in his talk, as I'm listening to this man who has been formidable in the way that I think about the world, I realized that if you write in your indigenous language, Kikuyu, as he did, or Xhosa, or Yoruba, or any of these 2,000 languages, in order to be literate in your own language, you're writing in the Roman alphabet. So in order to get to your own literacy in your own tongue, you still have to navigate the space of colonial script. And so with a little bit of turn on Audre Lorde, I was actually trying to use the master's tools to undo the master's house by making the curl pattern refer back to Africa, where we are all from, just some of us more recently, right? To make us think about how colonial and tools of colonization oppress and are hidden in plain sight, right? I think that everything is a collaboration. I am a collaboration, all of you. We're all collaborations, right? But this show is titled We Are Each Other because I was thinking about the love and communities that we form together across generations and with each other. I want you to think about all the communities that you belong to. There's the lineages that you belong to, there are the friend groups that you belong to, there's chosen family, as well as unchosen family. There's that too, right? You're choosing these communities, and now more than ever in this political climate with a fascist in charge of this nation and people getting lockstep behind him because of fear and his fear-mongering, knowing who your communities are and the multiplicity of them is pure strength. The other thing that is strength is to always find joy. Don't let anyone ever take your joy. But to think about those people who have influenced you and changed your lives. And that's what happened with Gwendolyn Brooks. When Gwendolyn Brooks wrote this poem, first woman to have won a Pulitzer Prize, black person to have won a Pulitzer Prize, when she wrote this poem to the great Paul Robeson, she was talking about what a big influence he was on her. And the poem is most famous because of these lines at the end where she repeats this. Now, some of you in the front can see it and some of you cannot. And because you haven't studied twist, we will read it in the Roman alphabet. But I want you to start from we are each other. We'll leave the that out. And I'll say it and then you can repeat after me. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. We are each other's magnitude and bond. So if I read that silently to myself, that's a kind of power. When I read it out loud, it's a kind of resonance of all my DNA. When we read it in community, it's even more powerful. It's like a pledge to one another when we say it out loud in community, right? So I was thinking about what that means to have things resonate through our bodies, and so this is why I asked my friend, my Detroit sister, Jennifer Harge, to take that very same poem, now transliterated into twist, so the poem on the right, and use it as dance notation. And so you're seeing Jennifer Harge on Belle Isle in outside of Detroit. Belle Isle was one of the places that was on the Underground Railroad, and she is dancing this poem, embodying this poem, this hairy poem and our DNA on sacred space, sacred ground in this country as a kind of freedom. And the last thing I'll say about this space is I love to say to my students, remember that you're stardust. We're all stardust. Like, how powerful is that to look to the sky? And even when you look to the sky, and if you're not in Houston and you're in a very, very dark place where there isn't a lot of light pollution, and it seems like, oh, right, that's why they call the Milky Way the Milky Way. It literally looks like light, milk spilled across the sky. A lot of my students have not seen that. They don't understand why it's called the Milky Way. They've only been in city spaces, urban spaces. But this idea of thinking that when you look at a night sky like that there are actually more atoms in your body than what you're seeing, those suns and distant suns in the sky, like how powerful are we? And the multiplicity of self and the power of community. That means a lot. We are each other. We're all that stardust. So that's what that piece behind you is about. Let's move in here. I'm going to get you all to come all the way over here. Come, don't be shy, come to me. What's the question I asked you to ask me? Twist, that's part of the question. Who named it? So, you all, I'm not shy. I will call up a stranger that I deeply respect and I will ask them to help me out, right? So I barely knew Jason Moran before I asked him if he would work with me. Twist, and this is the key to it, it lives as a digital font, was named by Poet Laureate Rita Dove. If you do not know who Rita Dove is, fix that soon. I had just made Twist with Bo Peng, and then I was invited to a party that a friend of mine was hosting, and he said, do you know who Rita Dove is? And I think I looked at this man like he was crazy. I said, of course I know who Rita Dove is. And he said, well, she's going to be at the party. And I said, she just wrote this poem in the New Yorker called Found Sonnet, the Wig. She wrote that poem for me. She didn't know it, but she wrote that poem for me. And so one of the things that I did, knowing that Rita was going to be there, is that I transliterated her poem, Found Sonnet, the Wig, into twist. And I gave it to her. And she knew what it was because she's brilliant. She knew what it was immediately. She said, oh, you've made a hair font. I said, I did. And she said, then this is my poem. I said, yes. And she said, what do you call it? And I said, I don't know. I've been calling it the hair font. I'm not a poet. You are. And so she said, let me think on that. And so now twist belongs to both of us, all of us, but really belongs to, I often say to Rita, like, our hair font twist, our twist. In this, I hope that you all will know that you can grab one of these little cards. This project is called 1877-Hour Curl. That's a telephone number, as well as the title of the piece. If you dial that number, and then one of the extensions, you'll be able to hear each one of these poems read by the poets who have written it. These are all black women and black femmes who have written these poems. The best one is right here. It's an overprint of all of the transliterated poems. And when you get to this extension, you hear all of their voices in chorus reading the poem, because that's where the community is. So for a long time making artwork with hair, hair gets gendered. Textiles get gendered, hair gets gendered. I find it all a little tiresome. But someone said, well, do you ever make work with that isn't about women? Okay. But I took it in. I was like a little annoyed, but I took it in. And then a friend of mine was running a residency, festival that runs through April, which is Poetry Month, in Miami. The festival was called Oh Miami. And he said, Sonya, will you do something? And I said, yeah, but I'm not a poet. And he said, yeah, but you're going to do something. And I said, okay, I'll do something. What are we going to do? And I said, well, we need to find a really good poem. But what I want to do is steal this really good idea that I read about in the newspaper. And the idea that I read about is that there was a barber who was giving little boys, black barber, who was giving little black boys free haircuts if they read to him. And I thought, okay, literacy as currency, this is powerful, right? So I just stole that idea. And then Haircut for a Poem got developed. What I did is I went to 2 black neighborhoods and black barbershops in Miami, in Overtown, which is a historically African-American neighborhood, and then Little Haiti, which is historically Haitian neighborhood, black people. And each of these men are reading Calvin Hernton's The Distant Drum and getting a free haircut. And I have a lot to say about what it meant to be in this gendered space, how I was invited in, how I was included, how things that happened in that space. But one of the things that was really, really beautiful to me is this. What you saw just before, where you see the head barber leaning over this other gentleman and helping him read. So that gentleman had some sort of mental situation that meant that he wasn't able to read so well. And so there's love in that space right there. Lots of love, and also pride about the love that they had for one another. It's a beautiful thing. And there was another gentleman who had trouble reading the poem because of racial inequality in our educational system, and was a little embarrassed by that. And that made me think of the vulnerability of putting these men in this space. But it made me also think that they shouldn't feel ashamed of that. America should feel ashamed of that. So let's talk a little bit about America and its shame. Let's move over here. I'm making you all walk through this space so that everybody gets their steps in today. And also I invite you all to, if you have any questions, I'm going to just show you a couple of more pieces, and then I'm hoping that you'll have some questions for me. Some of you know this because I mentioned it at the opening, but I, as an educator, really truly feel that the way that we understand things is by making things together. The way that we, as a craftsperson, I also understand that when you make something, you know something. When I'm teaching a beading class, let's say, I teach my students, let's say I have 20 students, I'll teach these 5 a technique, and 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 then they know that they're going to switch up and teach each other, right? When they do that, I know that they know in a different way. Also, they don't want to disappoint one another, right? Right? Because there's that responsibility, right, to community, right? So there's knowing and there's unknowing. One of the things that I ask my students after every class is, what did you learn and what did you unlearn in the class? Because unlearning is as powerful as learning. So one of the things that we have learned in this country is that the Confederate battle flag is kind of the symbol of lots of things, including white terrorism, but it has also been used as a symbol of Southern pride. It has also been used as a symbol of the Civil War, right? This one flag, there were several Confederate flags, but this one that we know very well, the one with the X, you know, was the one that was popularized by the Ku Klux Klan. That's actually why we know it so well, is because of their propaganda and white terrorism. So I went about unlearning that by asking people to unweave this symbol of white terrorism. I learned so much by standing when this piece is performed. You're just seeing the video of the piece, but when the piece is performed, there is a partially unraveled Confederate flag. I stand on one side of it, and people line up behind me, and one by one, we unravel together. So we are paired together. The things that people tell me in the 2 to 3 minutes that we're together with one another is fascinating to me. It is a space of confession. We're standing next to each other. We're not looking at each other. We're standing next to each other. And I didn't realize how powerful that is, to stand next to someone and do something like this. Lots of stories. Sometimes I'm just gossiping with friends because I know what the work is about. Other times people are telling me things that they would never tell me at a cocktail party. Because mostly people don't walk up to me at a cocktail party and say, you know, my uncle belongs to the KKK. Mostly people don't do that, right? But somehow in this space, there was room. The art provided this space for there to be a kind of a confession. Quoting James Baldwin is never a bad thing to do, all right? Art as a kind of a confession. So my confession to you is that it was in 2011, when I had a Smithsonian Artist Research Fellowship to study hair and combs, no surprise there, right? That I happened to walk into, and I was at the at the African Art Museum, that's where I was based, and at the Natural History Museum, that's where I was also based. But I would go in that month that I was there to check out the other museums in my hometown of Washington, D.C. And so I walked into the American History Museum one day. This was in July. There's this long line of people waiting to see the Star-Spangled Banner, right? Because it's July in D.C. That's what people do. And I said, I'm not standing in that line. Not going to do that. It'll be there when I come back. I've seen it before anyway. And I went upstairs, and there was this exhibition of material culture objects of presidencies. And I saw Lincoln's top hat, because you see a top hat, you know it's Lincoln, right? This is a power of symbol. Go over there, and then I see this. Half of a dishcloth, and I lean in because it's cloth, and cloth is powerful. What is that? And it says that it is the cloth that was used to surrender, for the Confederates to surrender at Appomattox, almost 160 years to this date. Are there children in the room? No, okay. I said out loud, what the fuck? Why didn't I know about this? How come I know about this thing? The battle flag. That should, you don't use battle flags anymore unless you're using them for ill, right? How come I don't know about this? And then I said the beautiful thing about art and craft is that you can use it as a tool. In community, first ones I did was, make these ones, sew the flag back together. So this is an image of this is what I saw at the Smithsonian. Half of the Confederate flag of surrender flag, or flag of truce as it's often called, because it was divided in half. And then one half got divided in lots and lots of little pieces. But the whole half, was at the Smithsonian. So the first thing I did was make a reproduction, and suture it back together. But that's not enough. And that already had like 12 people collaborating in it, like who's helping me dye, and who's helping me weave, and who's helping me stitch, where the linen comes from, all of that, Yeah, so that's my piece, but also many hands in it. So at the Fabric Workshop and Museum, they invited me to do a residency, and they said, do you have any ideas in mind? And I will tell you that I applied for a big grant, and I thought this was a brilliant idea to bring to the fore and to public knowledge and public engagement the idea of the Confederate truce flag. That is to say, when white supremacy, the day that white supremacy surrendered. And I didn't get the grant, and I was pissed about that. I said, this is a brilliant project, but I didn't get the grant. So when the Fabric Workshop and Museum in Philadelphia, a former flag factory, by the way, says to me, do you have an idea? I was like, I have one in my back pocket that someone just rejected because the ancestors were saying, yeah, that grant's not for you. You need some Fabric Workshop help. Just be patient. Just be patient. And so the Fabric Workshop and I went about making 100 true to scale. You see that in many behind you. We made one that is 100 times the scale of the original. That is called monumental. That one is now at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. That's not enough. We got to get you all to make some too. I needed people to feel this structure. If you've never woven before, what does it mean to weave? And what does it mean to weave this image, this symbol of our country coming back together and the demise of white supremacy, which has always been one of the major ways that this country has been pulled apart. And you see examples of people who have done these weavings before. What I love in this is the glitch, the evidence of learning, right? And I love that Sarah and her team not only put those two next to each other, the unweaving and the coming together, but also as people are weaving on these, that they are seeing before them the evidence of all those who have woven as well. This becomes a scroll, a text, a story of the work that we are doing together to bring this nation back together. But you can't walk off with one of those, it stays on the loom. That's not fair. So then we have lesson plan, right? And you get to be here. And was someone rubbing on this one already? I get a little Sonya Clark as well. So you can rub on here. And just as my grandmother is reverberating through the bow that Regina Carter is playing and into our bodies, rubbing this texture is also reverberating into your bones as a way of knowing. Just the same way that you learn to practice the alphabet as a child, repetitively over and over again, as an embodied knowledge. I don't understand art that doesn't engage other people. I honestly don't understand it. For me, that's where the juice is, right? Right, Macon? Right? That's where the juice is. And there are moments when there's unexpected serendipity. I just gave you an example of applying to a grant that I didn't get, and then an opportunity came and it was much better. Because I have to tell you, if I had gotten that grant, I couldn't have done the things that I was able to do with the fabric workshop and museum. I couldn't have done them. They spoil artists. They say, what else do you want to make? Right? And if I had tried to do it by myself, I wouldn't have been able to pull off all of the things that we were able to do together, right? When the show Monumental Cloth, the Monumental Cloth, the Flag We Should Know, which was engaging this historical object, was mounted in Philadelphia, the director of that museum called me about 24 hours before I was to arrive for the opening, and she said, Sonya, the show looks great, but, she said, it's a big white space, you know, and even there, the floor isn't dark. The floor is like the neutral color of concrete. So she's like, we have all this whiteness in the space, and this white floor, so it's a lot of white. And I said, oh. And I said, well, I think we can solve things with color. I always do. And I said, well, we have all this white in this space, but we know the thing about the original flag is that it has these 3 little red stripes. And the reason it has these 3 little red stripes is that General Lee couldn't find a pure white cloth, and that was the closest he could find, right? So it has these little design elements. And so I said, okay, all right, so we can have let's have a wall, a point of focus wall at the end of one of the rooms. This is a huge space that this was in, the end of one of the rooms, that just color matches this, right? This is the same red. And they said, great. Well, she said, great. Susan said, great, I'm going to go out, I'm going to ask someone to go out immediately to Benjamin Moore and color match this red madder, because that's how the original was dyed, with red or madder root, to get just the right color. And because the universe has a sense of humor, the card that was a perfect match had 3 colors on it. One of them was cherry wine. One of them was raspberry truffle. I want you to understand those as confectionery delights. And the middle one was Confederate red. And I just want you to hold on to what that means. Like, in between these sweetnesses is tucked a lot of white supremacy, and a color that was referred to as a timeless and enduring color. And so I had to call Benjamin Moore out about it. And that's what that title wall is about in the back. Story gets better. Benjamin Moore renames the color. And it's like they understood that January 6th was coming, so they renamed the color Patriot Red. Wow. Sometimes the art just makes itself. I love to hear your laughter, because remember when I said we cannot lose our joy. We're talking about serious business, but we're laughing because we know there's something like so ridiculous in this, but we still have joy. We still have purpose, but we still have joy. The last piece I'm going to tell you about is this long list of words. When we're talking about the propaganda of Benjamin Moore, please don't use that company and their paints. My studio manager did this research, and she said, I'm going to see how many things I can find online that have the Confederate battle flag on them. Well, baby onesies is on this list. Yoga mats is on this list. Really? And then also, really? Right? Okay. But we are each other, and so we will persevere. I want to hear some questions and some reflections from you. I don't know how to get you a mic or if I should repeat your questions, but I really do want to hear from you because you helped me make the next body of work.
I'll find you with the mic.
Thank you so much, Sonya.
Of course.
Question is about when you're talking about twist, and you're talking about the Roman alphabet and saying that you were using the master's tools, how do you think about that in relation to the linen and the weaving and like recreating this symbol? I'm just interested in how you applied that idea of the master's tools to making so many of these, dish towels.
So I mean, I have to say when the show opened, this work has been shown a lot in a lot of different venues. When the show opened at the Fabric Workshop and Museum in 2019, there were people who heard that there was a show about the Confederacy, and they came for all the unfortunate reasons. And some of them came to me and said, I thought this was going to be a different kind of show. And I said, but this is the history. So what's your problem with this, right? So that is a little bit of a turn, Even this notion that well, why don't we talk about this surrender? That's part of Confederate history, right? So let's talk about that. Why aren't we talking about that, right? I guess that's maybe what you're asking. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I love that General Lee couldn't find a pure white cloth because those 3 little red stripes helped make this piece. Who knew? that was going to happen, right? Who else has a question for me? Any questions or reflections? How do we make the work, the next body of work? Wait, you have the camera and the mic?
I know, sorry, it's too much power. I was really struck by some of what you were talking about, how you were growing up in the DC area, and a lot of this symbol and this history kind of came with sort of the environment that you were steeped in. And it got me to thinking about how other flags have been sort of appropriated for this very nefarious, extremely nationalistic, racist sort of moment that we're having. And the Gadsden flag, I feel, was very ubiquitous in that region long before it exploded into this sort of mainstream adoption. That's the Don't Tread on Me flag, the yellow one. And I feel like I remember seeing license plates in Northern Virginia with it on it, but now it's kind of got this different valence. But as you say, the nature of the flag, erroneous or otherwise, it underlies this very dark reality. And so do you think about other flags that are similarly sort of weighted as in, the founding of the country on the principles it was and the way that it was? So that's my very long question, sorry.
I mean, I am certainly not the only artist working with flags. John Sims, we were talking about John Sims, was burning Confederate flags. Bree Newsom was pulling down Confederate flags. So there are lots of people just working around the Confederacy itself. And there's a writer whose name is John Eggert, I believe, who said that a flag is a piece of cloth that makes the hearts of men grow bold. The power of a cloth to shift people politically. Think about that, right? I think about it all the time. I also think hair has that power, but that's a whole nother thing. So yeah, for many years I was the hat lady for a body of work, and then I was the hair lady. I still am the hair lady, and then I was a flag lady, and now I'm on to a couple of other things, right? So I'm still interested in the power of cloth, but the power of symbolism, particularly being in Richmond when I was making most of this work, and people were talking about taking down monuments, and I was like, you know what's really monumental? Is this textile, right? Is really monumental. Because you can take, like, you might not know that that's Robert E. Lee unless you look at the statue, but you can see a Confederate battle flag because it's a battle flag way from, if I had, I would never, but if I had a pin on, you'd be able to see it from far away, right? And so that becomes a powerful symbol embodied in a cloth. And so that power I'm interested in sort of upending to do good with, right? I want to encourage you all. Actually, it's a requirement that you all go to the African American Museum, because there are 3 major collaborative pieces that have come, that are part of this traveling exhibition, that are in that space, and I am so proud to be in that space. And I want to just talk a little bit about those, even though they're not right in front of us. So this is my call to, I'm going to make them take attendance, like you all have to show up if you haven't been there already. So one piece is the oldest collaborative piece that I've ever done. And it was, the seed of that was a necklace that my childhood friend, Franklin Gilliam, gave me, that she got from Senegal. Just as like little leather packets. You've probably seen them. Like people just have these little leather packets on necklaces, right? And she bought that for me when she was in Senegal, when we were all both students in college. She said, I got this for you because at the time I was really a little skinny thing, and she was like, you need a lot more protection. You're just like going to break or something, right? And I wore it for years and years, and then I realized that I thought about the power in that necklace. What it is leather that is encasing medicines, either powerful medicines or writings like prayers, probably writings from the Quran. And I'm not Muslim, but I appreciate, I'll take anybody's like gifts and prayers. I'll take it all. And so I invited people to write down their own hopes, wishes, prayers, and dreams, and case them in their own power packets, and either take them with them or add them to the collective. And that project has started in 1997 or 1998 and has continued to grow. And remember when we were standing in this space and I was saying there's so many of us, but in fact there's so many more, because each one of you is thousands of people, and more than that, it keeps doubling as you go back each generation, right? Whenever I have the privilege of being in one of the spaces that the Beaded Prayers Project is mounted, I am aware of all the people that are in that space with me, with us, their power, right? And that collectiveness is what was kind of the seed to this kind of project, the oldest project still running. The other project, one of the other projects that is in that space is a project about the power of the intimacy between 2 women. I got my hair done. 12 hairdressers each did my hair. Each one of them used my body as a canvas for her art. Those are also in that space, and I have a lot to say about that project. The amount that I learned from each one of those hairstylists, knowing that in African American communities, often the hairstylist is the first line of therapist, even maybe the person that you confess to, right? Just the person you gossip with when nobody else, like their elders who they don't see that many people, but they always get their hair done, right? And also they taught me a lot about wellness. Like one of the hairstylists was like, what happened 2 months ago? Because your hair, she could read in my hair that something had happened. And she was correct. And then the last piece is an interactive piece that is a piece about freedom. I'd like to think that all of the work is a piece about freedom. And this piece is called Finding Freedom. So it's in a dark room and the first floor of the African American Museum. And it's a canopy that hangs over your head, a blue canopy speckled with white stars. But that canopy is made up of thousands of pieces of cloth about this big, and it looks like a quilt, a pieced quilt. And those pieces have all been made, well, many of them have been made by those who have been incarcerated in this system, this country. And as you navigate that space with a little flashlight to try and find the Big Dipper, which is what Harriet Tubman and other freedom fighters used to help enslaved Africans and their descendants find their way north to freedom, I want you to know that the flashlight that you're holding is a blacklight flashlight because one of the incarcerated gentlemen said, you know what would help people see better in this space? You know how they would find those even better? Is if you used a black light, because it'll make the blue more blue and the white more white. And so when you're holding those flashlights, I want you to think about him. I have never had such deep discussions about freedom and what it means to be made unfree as those discussions that I learned from those who were incarcerated. We have a lot of work to do in this nation around freedom and unfreedoms. The last thing I will say about that piece is that when you walk into this space, it's like, it's so many stars right, above you. And sometimes I say to people, can you imagine counting how many stars there are? And people are like, what, are you crazy? Can you imagine counting how many hairs there are in your head? What, are you crazy? So let me make those numbers very real. The stars in the piece, Finding Freedom at the African American Museum, are far less than the number of people that were forcibly migrated from the continent of Africa to this nation. Far less. Far less. So while it seems awesome, realize each one of those specks is a human life. The number of hairs on your head, if you grow hair like mine, that's about 80,000 hairs. That's on the low side for 1 year of the transatlantic slavery. You wouldn't even think, like, the idea of counting your hair seems ridiculous, right? But this has been this great disease of this nation that we have to root out together. Together. Okay, more questions. Enough of me talking. More questions.
With your piece, Unraveling the Confederate Flag, you said that you often have an experience that sort of simulates the confessional. And I'm wondering, have you produced documents out of that? Are there some confessions that you've received that have produced a new trajectory in your work or affected you in some, your actual practice in a big way?
Not yet, but I'll share with you some of the confessionals. So I have a friend, Kelly Jones, who is an amazing art historian out of Columbia. Okay, anyway. So Kelly Jones, she said to me, she was unraveling with me, and she was like, you're getting all these stories, you have to write them down. And I was like, I kind of like the oral history of them. So one of the stories was I was standing next to a woman. So it is really true that people do tell me about their family members who belong to the KKK. That has happened on so many occasions I can't even tell you, right? And they're not saying it proudly, right? But they're coming to say, this is why I'm here. And I have to tell you that sometimes I say to those people, this is symbolic work, what we're doing. Unraveling this Confederate flag, this is not the actual work. You know what I mean? This is not the actual work. Okay. I also had this occasion where there was a young woman who was standing next to me. She was phenotypically white, racialized as white to my eye. And she was telling me that she hadn't told many people this, but that she was pregnant. And her partner was a black man. And so this child that she was carrying would be black. And she said, until I had a black body in my body, I didn't realize how high the stakes are. It's powerful stuff, right? It hasn't made me make a piece, except that we're in this piece sort of describing this work together, and so I'm sharing these stories with you. I had another person who was so triggered by their experience. Triggered is such a complicated word now, but so traumatized by their experience with Confederate flags and how they were used in their life that she was trembling. And to her, I had to say, it's just a piece of cloth. Just a piece of cloth, right? So I never know what I'm getting, but I have to be prepared for all of it. And so it made me think more about the power of performance spaces. I never really think of myself as a performance artist, but the power of performance spaces to shift just something in the moment between two people. Thank you for your question. Oh. Hi.
I'm curious about using 100 as a unit of measure on the cloths.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so why 100? And this piece gets shown in two different ways. It couldn't be shown in this space in this way, but sometimes we have it on a big plinth, so there are 100 of them laid out. I think it's just about like the 100%ness of it, you know? Like, where'd you go? Oh, yeah, right. You were here and now, right. Like, what would it mean to be at 100% capacity of the end of white supremacy? What does that world look like? Because if we can't see it, it won't happen. And this is not, just to be clear, I am talking about the end of white supremacy. Love me some white people. That's not what I'm talking about. It's the supremacy that's the problem. What does this world look like without white supremacy? At 100%. Not 99%, but 100%, because if we can't see it, we won't be able to get there. I want you all to actually imagine that. That means you have to know and discern when white supremacy is happening. It means you have to undo the things that, you know, like make you feel a little comfortable. It's like, that part isn't so bad, right? Because we're all complicit in it. Me too, right? So you have to know it, see it, and then say, what is this world like without it? And so that 100 is about that 100%ness. No one has ever asked me that question. It seems like someone would, but thank you. These are good questions. What else we got? Or are we calling it a day? We having some drinks? What's happening? Oh.
Thank you. I guess hearing you say that and sitting with Brooke, I just want to say thank you so much. It's so powerful, and actually getting to hear you speak about it, I'm going to tear up a little bit, but it's really, it just feels so important always, but for right now in particular. And I'm curious if you've seen, like, thinking about the role of white people in, like, breaking this down and doing this work, if you've seen successful collaborations between Black and white people working on this history, or what that role looked like, particularly in the arts, because that's something that I've been trying to find, and it is hard to do in a way that doesn't replicate harm or do other things. And so finding examples is something that I'm trying to do right now. So, yeah. Thank you.
So I think there are many, many, many ways, and so one of the, like, just even your question, like, am I replicating harm? Who's in charge? Who's, you know, all of that. That is like half the work right there, Macon. It doesn't surprise me that you would be asking those questions. I actually think that when I ask people to sit down and weave here, again, it's symbolic, but it's like, what are you weaving? What are we creating together, right? And so it's light touch, but it's why I love the glitch in it. Like, that wasn't necessarily so easy. And if you're a pro at it, right? Did you just teach the next person how to be a pro, right? So, right? Like, if you have a little success, or if you faltered, did you then show the person, like, here's a mistake I made, right? And I think there's so much room in our vulnerability with one another. I had someone ask me when this show happened, when Monumental Cloth was up as an entire show, and I said, why don't you think we know this flag? And someone said, well, it's a flag of surrender, right? And I said, so why isn't surrendering a point of power? It's sort of like the learning and unlearning thing, right? So it's just like, what did I learn? What did I unlearn? So I would say, yeah, I guess I could name some things, but I don't think that's really what you're asking. I mean, I think it's like at that more granular level of like, what are we learning together? What are we unlearning together? Where are the mistakes that I've made? Where are the mistakes that you've made, right? Where are the things that were like, oh, that wasn't a mistake, you know what I mean? And that worked in this situation, but it might not work in this situation, right? And so that openness and that vulnerability, coupled with if people would just start reading, so history would not repeat itself so much. Like it is at once not surprising that this person is in power, and in another sense so surprising as if the American system had failed us because people don't know a history at all. The playbook is old. Well, this playbook is old. It's not new. If you want to know what's going to happen, I have some books for you. Also, they wrote it down. They wrote down what they're going to do, right? Or try to do. So it's just like if someone's showing you their playbook, then you already are like, okay, so we know what's coming. That means that we can form community to fight against the oppressiveness that is promising to come our way. And if you think it's not coming for you, let me tell you, that is incorrect. It might not be coming for you first, but if you are in an art space right now, they're trying to shut down the arts. You all love the arts enough to be here on a Saturday. So what do we have? We have our community, we have our strength, we have our vulnerability, we have the things that have like the shared vulnerability, the shared successes, right? That openness is our strength. And that little laughter around this Confederate red business, we have our joy, right? Okay, that's enough.
Thank you, Sonya.
Where are you all going?
Houston Museum of African American Culture. It's on Caroline Street. It's 4 blocks away. It's 10 minutes. It's 2-minute drive. And it's open till 6, so go right now. All right, thanks.